It's now time to invite the captain up to have a chat to you folks. So why don't you put your hands together and welcome the captain of the Essendon Football Club, the 2012 Brownlow medalist, Mr. Jobe Watson. Jobe has been here for a while, already very generous with his time, and I see him taking photos and getting around. But Jobe, the burning question on my lips as we get underway is, as an Essendon footballer walking in past the life-size shots of Ivan Maric and Jack Riewoldt there, you know, they say the bump's dead in football, but did you just want to lay a hip and shoulder on the way in?
No, Ivan's too big for me, so I'll stay away from him. But it's a bit strange being down at Punt Road. You drive past it all the time, so it's nice of them to have us.
We might start from the start. Captain's Club's all about facilitating leadership and leadership in sport, and obviously football is what Jobe's all about. Jobe, you grew up with your father playing football. Tell us about, right as a young kid, your first sort of entry into football, what that looked like.
Yeah, I suppose for me it was a bit of a dream being around a footy club at such a young age, and I got to do whatever I liked, and no one seemed to tell me off, and I used to run around and steal cans of Coke and pies and things like that, and it was like a playground for a 3 or 4 year old kid, and just no matter what I did, no one seemed to bring me into any discipline. So whether it was because Dad was the captain, or whether it was just that's what happens with young kids, but yeah, it was a wonderful playground to grow up in.
Do they still let you? They make you pay for your pies now at Windy Hill?
No, they still let us take them now.
So mate, when you started playing, tell us what was your first experience captaining a team?
I think the first time I captained a side was with Essendon. I was junior, sort of with other kids, and we had a guy who plays for Collingwood, Luke Ball, who was a fantastic leader, and he was our captain at school, and then then we went on a leadership camp. There was a group of about 8 of us went on a camp to Japan. When I was in just after my 4th year at Essendon, and that was sort of about taking, young guys who were sort of 21 at the time, about taking you out of your comfort zone. And I remember we did an amazing race around Japan on our first day, and there was sort of that experience, and we lived with families who didn't speak any English, and we had to live with them for a few days, and that was a wonderful experience, and some fun times there, and that was sort of, I suppose, the introduction to the clubs with leadership to me.
Let's jump back for a second, because you mentioned playing with Luke at high school. You played at Xavier College. How did you go growing up in a football school there? And tell us a little bit about some of the guys you grew up with, not only at Xavier, but also those guys that you played schoolboy footy with that now are your teammates and your rivals at AFL level.
Yeah, I suppose I was really fortunate that the school that I went to catered. My biggest passion was sport. Academically, I probably wasn't as astute as what I was focused on sport, but the school catered for that, and much to the horror of my parents, the end of semester results and things like that. But I just enjoyed being at school. I loved the environment. I had a lot of guys who were older than me who were, I suppose, stepping through the path that that I would have loved to have done when I was sort of 14, 15, and they were a really close friend of mine, Ted Richards, got drafted when I was in year 10, and I suppose you see those guys progressing, and you think about the lives that they're about to live, and how fantastic that would be. And I guess that kind of culture was nurtured through the school, and was something that we probably passed on to the guys who went after us as well. And there seems to be another influx of guys who've come through the school and now having successful careers as well.
Did the school do much to prepare you for going to AFL? You mentioned Ted and a few other guys at the school. Was it the school, or who were the leaders and the people preparing you when you were taking that step from high school up towards getting drafted? Yeah,
I suppose personally I was pretty naive into what the AFL system was like and how competitive it was. I probably lived a bit of a sheltered life in the private school existence, and then stepping into the world of the AFL was a bit of a shock for me. And I think it was probably, although my father had lived in that world, they were never really pushy parents that they wanted me to do anything that I didn't really want to do, and therefore I think they were conscious of me finding out things on my own and learning my own experiences and having my own experiences, and they felt that was the best way, I think, in terms of me developing the person that I wanted to be, and so I think that I learned some pretty tough lessons early on in my career, and I'm thankful that I did, but I probably wasn't really well prepared for the AFL system.
When you say learnt some tough lessons, is that related to pressure, being the son of towards being naive and not expecting? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, the expectations having a father who played just a sort of human nature, and they happen. But I think it was just how competitive the elite sport is. The requirements from a fitness level, the mental fatigue and requirements that are needed, all those sort of things. I mean, I played footy because I just loved it, and I really loved having fun with my friends, and that was the driving force for me. And then all of a sudden it became a business and it became a job very quickly, and I just wasn't prepared emotionally or psychologically for that. And as an 18-year-old, I don't think you're probably supposed to be prepared for it. It's something that it would be a shock for most kids. I think perhaps people who go through the TAC system are better prepared for it, but it was sort of something that I just had to sort of grasp and I was lucky enough that I had a few years to develop in it.
Yeah, probably a great endorsement for Captain's Camp, the way you're talking there about not being able to grasp it as an 18-year-old, but having gone through it yourself and come in as a father-son, and now being captain of the club, do you take a special interest with someone like Jobe Danaher coming in also as a father-son, a kid with high raps coming in and doing pretty well in his first couple of games?
Yeah, certainly take a vested interest in the father-sons, and we've got another kid from the same school I went to, so you sort of take an interest in him. And I think that though, what you can do is you can empathise a little bit with the guys who perhaps aren't the standouts at a young age, or the most talented guys, and you can probably understand the mental stresses that young guys go through. And while they're never easy, I think it's important to have some form of empathy for those people going through those situations, especially when you're in a leadership capacity yourself.
Just I look around the room, I'm thinking we've got plenty. Who in the room here are parents or sports coaches for that matter? So a decent amount. I'm curious for you, the stuff that you found valuable in terms of your parents' input, but also your coach's input in terms of the leadership they've given you over time.
Yeah, I mean, I always, I suppose I have, especially with coaches and things like that, even to this day, I still try to impress coaches. I sort of covet that feeling of, wanting to impress them. And I had that as a junior, and I still have it as this day. And I think it's sort of something that helps you drive and never be satisfied. But I guess the people who parents and the people who are coaches in the room understand the importance that they have, but for me that is still how I feel today, and I'm 28 years old and I still want to impress Hurdy, and I think that's a mentality for a lot of people. Doing
a great job impressing now. I'm curious to hear a little bit on how the conversation with your old man went, whether it was 05 or when he says, Jobe, now's the time to step up. Your career might not go as well as you wanted to. You don't step up now. How did Dad approach that, and how did you respond to that one?
Well, the initial conversation was very short. It was him saying, "I don't think you're doing a very good job," and me walking out of the room. So, like all sons, I don't really appreciate getting direct advice from my parents, my father especially. And we've often had some very interesting chats about post-game about his thoughts on my match, and he just he asks me, "Do you want me to tell you what I think?" And invariably I always say, "Well, yeah, tell me what you think." But I know it's a leading question that, he always says, if we don't play well, he asks me if I was injured and things like that. So, so that was the gist of the conversation we had. It was very much, look, what you're doing now is not going to get you anywhere. Your mother and I don't care what you do. Just do what makes you happy. But at the moment, I know this is not making you happy, and I think you're the one that is holding yourself back from giving yourself the best opportunity to do that. And I went away and pouted for a few days, and then sort of came back to it, and sort of the rest is history, I guess.
Well, on that history, 7 years later, you've done something he never did in winning a Brownlow medal. Did you come back to him and a little bit of
No, I would have loved to if I knew that it would have mattered. Anything that I'd said to him that would have annoyed him, but he wouldn't have. His own career, he's an incredibly humble person, and he hates talking about himself in any capacity whatsoever. So I knew it wouldn't matter to him whatsoever, so I just didn't bother.
Joe, why don't you give us some of your insights? You're captaining a club that's incredibly successful at the moment. I'll give you a two-part question. How do you go about leading that group on and off the field in the good times, but then also how do you go leading on and off the field when stuff's not so great?
Yeah, well, I'm probably getting a taste of a bit of both in recent months, but I think one of the things that I really try to do is when things are going well, and for us it's pretty easy to work out when things are going well. It's when the team's winning, when the group is feeling good about themselves. That's when we find that we drive harder, the playing group, and that's when I think that you're tougher on your teammates, and the coaches are tougher on us in that sort of when it's that occurrence. And then when things aren't going well, I think that you're more education and a little bit softer and cuddling a little bit and promoting the type of behaviours that you want. But none of these things work unless there's a respect aspect to a club or a group of people. And it has to be mutual, and you have to know that the people you're asking to follow you respect you, but they have to know that you respect them as well. And I think that is an important part of being a leader in any environment. Is I ask my teammates and people to make enormous sacrifices and to do things that put them through mental and physical fatigue, but I have full confidence that they'll do it to the best of their abilities, and I know that they know that I do the same for them, and that is something that you don't, you can't manufacture that. It's something that is built over a building of relationship over time, and investing in each other, and creating an environment where someone wants to be there and they feel like they can excel in their choice of activity, and that for us is AFL football.
Joe, I'm really enjoying hearing what you've got to say, Joe. I might give it a chance if there's anyone in the audience that wants to ask a question or two. I might take maybe 2 or 3 from the audience with a hand up. Yes, sir.
Joe, could you please explain the theory or the principle behind when somebody kicks a goal, whether it's the start of the game, first minute or 10 minutes, why are they told to run off the ground?
So this young man, he's got a question that's all about leadership. And so for those who didn't hear, the philosophy of why someone, when they kick a goal at whatever point in the game, it runs off the ground regularly for a sub.
It's actually a very simple one. After a player kicks a goal, they know that the camera's going to be on them, and they feel as if they're going to get the most camera time if they run off the ground, because they're isolated, so that's why they do it.
It's great, but it just flicks the guns at the same time, and things look good. Folks, does anyone else have a question from the audience? I don't know, jump on once. I was going to, sorry, yes, sir.
Joby, you know that Jamin and his team's idea about the captain's camp is good. How do you think you would have felt if you had been on one of these camps back in your early 15-year-old days?
Great question. I'll just repeat something in here. This gentleman, great question, just mentioned to Joe about the concept of captain's camp, and just asked what it would be like for Joe back in his day as a young footballer if he had a chance to be part of something like captain's camp.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because as an adolescent, a 15-year-old boy, you think you know a fair bit about the world, and I suppose thinking back to when I was